I'd like to call the Council Business Planning Committee, the whole budget meeting of December 12th to order. Councillor Thompson is not with us this evening. His daughter has a school event in Toronto, so he's there supporting her. Are there any declarations of interest? I see none. I see one. If you were in your chair, Councillor, when I called the question,
Absolutely.
we could be moving. I'm very cold.
Grouchy.
I want to move along.
All right.
What is your
I'll get right to it.
declaration with respect to?
I am reiterating a interest in a capital item regarding investment in Jordan Station because of my employment for with Niagara Planning Group, and we represent Phelps Homes. So that's a reiteration of a declaration that I made a few weeks ago during capital budget.
You have that, Sir William? I don't remember that, but anyway. Okay. Confirmation of the agenda. Do any members have any changes to the order of business detailed in tonight's agenda? Do I have to separate you two? What is the pleasure of committee on any changes? Nothing? Okay. Members of the public present? Please be advised that this evening's public meeting is being convened pursuant to the provisions of the Municipal Act 2001 and the Town of Lincoln's notice bylaw for the purpose of considering comments from the public with respect to the proposed 2018 water and wastewater rates for the 2018 budget. Council is proposing to set the rates charged by the Town of Lincoln for the treatment and distribution of water and the collection and treatment of wastewater, and to establish a 2018 budget. Rates collected under the water and wastewater rate bylaw shall fund operating expenses and capital expenditures associated with the town's water and wastewater system. Once all comments have been received, the public meeting will be concluded, and Council will consider any public comments during the report section of tonight's agenda. Once consideration is concluded, the items may be referred to the council meeting of December 18th, 2017 for final consideration and adoption. Should approval of the 2018 water and wastewater rates or budget be deferred by council on December 18th, no further notice shall be required if a public statement is made at that meeting declaring that the matter has been deferred and the municipality now intends to adopt or amend the budget at a later council meeting specified in the public statement. The public meeting shall now commence. No written submissions have been received regarding the proposed water and wastewater rates. Are there any persons wishing to address council regarding the proposed 2018 water and wastewater rates or budget? Please come forward and state your name, spelling your surname for the record. Anyone? Anyone? Okay. There being no other persons present to address members of council, I declare the public meeting closed. We have no delegations this evening, and we have no items of correspondence this evening. Reports. TR 17-20, 2018 Ontario Regulation 284/09 Compliance Report. At this time, I would ask the Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Kirkopoulos, and the Director of Finance and Administration, Mrs. Fanny, to provide an overview of Report TR 17-20. 20. I stand corrected. 21.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. This report is a housekeeping item. Under the regulation, we are required to identify for council the items that we do not budget, so the non-cash items for amortization and the future employee benefits. So what we have provided is the estimate that will be captured in our financial statements, but will not be budgeted for during the 2018 budget deliberations. If you have any questions.
So we have a motion moved by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor McPherson, the chairman. that report TR 17-21 regarding the budget requirements of Ontario Regulation 284-09 or /09, passed under the Municipal Act 2001 be received as information, and that Council adopt the compliance report for expenses excluded from the 2018 budget as a requirement of Ontario Regulations 284-09, passed under the Municipal Act 2001. All those in favor? That's carried. The 2018 final operating and capital budget recommendations and summary. At this time, I would ask, again, the CAO and the Director of Finance and Admin to provide an overview of the budget deliberations to date in order to assist in guiding our deliberations this evening.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to be before you. This is the 7th time we will be before committee and council presenting the budget and hopefully ratifying this budget and moving forward. A lot of what you'll see tonight in this presentation is somewhat repetitive. It's meant to provide an additional overview for council in terms of where we're at as it relates to the 2018 budget. You will see two pieces that are new in this particular presentation, and those pieces specifically have to do with an update of where we're at from a tax levy perspective and the scenarios presented, and some points of, I think, clarification around the business case for procurement as well as the Vineland Fire Station. A few comments I think I want to make heading into the presentation and that we can get into as we start the conversation, I think really focuses around the continued investment that you're going to see as a result of this budget. And I think, kudos to council for your commitment and your focus as it relates to moving this forward. We've tried to take a strategic long-term planning approach to this particular budget, and I think what you've got before you and that we're recommending for council approval is a balanced budget. It's something that looks at continued investment and maintaining the levels of investment that this council has made over the last 3 years. I think we've listened to the community in terms of what we heard through a very extensive visioning process, and we've tried, where possible, to make investments that show long-term value. So moving forward, tonight's agenda, a little bit of a follow-up from November 21st, the last time we were in front of you almost 3 weeks ago. A quick budget recap from a capital perspective, a water and wastewater budget recap, an operating budget recap, and then, as I highlighted earlier, some updated tax levy scenarios for council, and then we can move to council inquiries and any questions that council may have. So in terms of the 7 times that we were before you as it relates to this particular budget, as you can see there, and as we've reported in the past, we started this process towards mid-May, and throughout September, October, and November, we've been in front of council a number of times. The budget themes that were prevalent in terms of how we began to look at things and where we and the lens we took to the budget process really focus around accountability and transparency, financial sustainability, infrastructure sustainability, and service delivery. So a follow-up to November 21st, the last time we were in front of you. One of the key things I think we heard was around the Vineland Fire Station design. Was this something that was required? Was this something that we needed to do in 2018, or could it be deferred? I think you heard both Director Dale as well as Mr. Arians, as a representative of the FBH group, highlight the importance and provide timelines as to when they believed construction would begin and when there would be occupancy. We do believe, with the current station in Vineland being where it is and looking at a number of factors around when construction at Prudhome's will start, that notwithstanding, I think, the need to look at this design and to make sure that we have something that we can move forward with, that a deferral to 2019 is something that staff are in agreement with and have proposed in this particular budget document. So what we've done over the last number of weeks is look at the internal work that can commence in 2018 in terms of the project scope and site readiness, in terms of the site that we've selected, determine the best approach, whether that be design or design build. And our hope is to do all the prep work that's required and then to have tendering and award in 2019, once again to ensure that there is alignment with the Prudhome's development moving forward. So as I highlighted, staff are recommending removal of this project in 2018 and bringing it forward for consideration as part of the 2019 capital. In terms of procurement and the procurement resourcing strategy, you'll have received something from Angela yesterday as it relates to the business case. There's a number of pages there, and we can answer any specific questions you may have. But at the end of the day, the approach we're taking from a procurement process is we continue to recommend that procurement and that FTE be part of this particular budget in 2018. We are recommending a later hire, likely looking at the end of Q3, the beginning of Q4, in terms of when we would look to hire that resource, and what we plan on doing during the beginning part of the year in 2018 is really looking at our policies, our processes around procurement, and looking at what can be done to get those things in place before we hire someone. And then I think, as is highlighted here, that internal work will continue at the beginning of 2018, and then we will move to develop a job description, recruitment, and then hopefully have someone in the position, as I said, at the end of Q3, beginning of Q4. In terms of the water and wastewater budget approach, we have a new rate model that was implemented in 2017, and again, on the 21st, we were before you sharing the information there and where we stand. And this looks at allocating an annual increase to the base charge, but keeping everything else where it stands right now. So there's no increase to the variable rate. We also implemented, as you recall last year, a seasonal rate that decreases over the high season from June to August in terms of the variabilities around wastewater. There will be a planned increase to the base charge for 2018 as per the study model and what we've highlighted for you. That's highlighted on this particular page that speaks to where those increases are. As you can see, the variable rate, there is no change from year to year. That's highlighted here at the top of your screen, and then the base rate has increased year over year at a little under $2. What that means is a total of a $14.64 increase, or the equivalent of 4 cents per day for water and wastewater services. In terms of the capital budget and the recap as it relates to capital, again, a little bit of this is a repeat in terms of where we've been at. There is a focus on looking at the levy and funding sources and where we've got the most impact. We have taken a holistic approach in terms of continued investment in all assets of the community, so definitely looking at both hard and soft infrastructure. We've tried to be as accurate in our design and costing in any given year, and doing that in 1 year followed by build in the next year. And we're seeing a lot of that around that social infrastructure category. 2018 will be a lot of the planning work, and in 2019 will be when we're actually doing construction. And then projects by category is something we looked at in terms of the 2018 capital budget and laying that out differently so that it's more resident focused and end user focused versus departmental focus. Projects were prioritized using weighted criteria, and we took council through that weighting exercise and how we came up with the recommendations. As I highlighted earlier, it was a holistic approach to planning and something that looked at fair process and equitable assessment. Just to recap for council, we're looking at a little over $11 million in capital projects for 2018. And what that means from a levy perspective, the levy for capital expenditures is approximately $1.3 million, or a 2.6% increase as per our policies, which equates to $36,705 from 2017. I think it's important to note that when you put that into perspective and compare that to the fact that we've got an overall asset replacement value of $380 million, this really is a small incremental amount in terms of our capital budget. So again, I think just to highlight for council without getting into details, how that breakdown occurs in terms of those 4 categories, you see about 37% is under transportation, 46 under environment and safety. As I highlighted, the social infrastructure piece this year is lower at 3%, but you will see next year under that category, once all the planning and the design is done, that you'll see a lot of, that will increase. And then the corporate infrastructure is at 14%. How that program is funded is on the bottom part of your sheet in terms of transfers from DC reserve funds, transfers from our reserve funds, long-term borrowing, reserves, grants, and other. The operating budget, the approach we took, I think these highlight some of the things you've heard us talk to about, or talk towards and talk to over the last number of months. Most of the things we're doing take a cost-conscious approach into consideration. We're aligning with council priorities. We're aligning with our new vision. A lot of the things we do have a regulatory and legislative compliance piece to it, and so we need to meet our legislative and regulatory requirements. Service excellence and making sure we deliver good service is always paramount when we look at service delivery and look at our operating budget. Something that you've heard us say definitely for the last 2 years is really getting back to investing in the basics. I use things like needs versus wants and so forth, but really investing in the basic services that people expect from their municipality. Continued investment in long-term sustainability. I think this is an important point to be made here. This council over the last 2 years, if we take this year into consideration, has made an investment in infrastructure in terms of looking at the special infrastructure levy. If we look at last year, it was 1%. This year, we're looking at 1.5% in terms of that special infrastructure levy. And so I think that long-term piece, and I'll get into that when we look at the scenarios, is really an integral part of ensuring that from a community-wide perspective, that we are making sure that we're planning for the future. You've heard me say that there's a number of generational projects that this council is looking at. You're looking at making sure that you're in a healthy and positive role moving forward, and I think looking at things like infrastructure levies and one that is more significant than you've made in the past this year is a smart thing to do. And of course, last but not least, a culture of continuous improvement. So this is a slide I shared with you at the last meeting in terms of what we deem controllable versus uncontrollable budget factors. The uncontrollable really focus around those things like our collective agreement and the negotiated salary adjustments, wage progression through the grid, inflationary increases that we've highlighted there, and things like utilities and so forth. The things that are within our control really focus around materials. Service levels is always within the control of the municipality and council to make decisions to either look at cutting service levels or increasing service levels. And then professional services, things around our master planning. And so the consulting services that go with those particular plans. And then decisions that have been made that impact subsequent years. I think about the transit pilot project that's highlighted here. Again, those are things that are within our control versus things that are uncontrollable. On November 21st, we shared a little bit of a chart here that I think lays out how we came to the 5.6%. And is really broken down into the 4 categories that you see here: supplies and services, what we deem those human resource pieces and the new and enhanced initiatives, long-term financing and funding sources, which really are the offsets, whether that be revenue projections, whether that be rentals, fees, and so forth. Assessment growth is highlighted there. And then last but not least, the addition of agencies, boards, and commissions, and the monies being sought there. So just to repeat for council in terms of where we're at, we're sitting at a 5.6% increase as it relates specifically to the town portion, and that town portion accounts for 1/3 of the tax bill. So the tax levy scenario that is in front of you, when we look at the town department portion, we sit at 4.402%. Earlier when I was looking at this, and I think having the conversation with Chair Pakshariva, the mayor, and going through what I think, where we come to with that 4.4%, that also includes that 1.5% special infrastructure levy. So I think when you remove that 1.5 out of there, then from a town perspective, where we're actually sitting at is 2.9%. I think the investment of 1.5% for long-term sustainability is something that, we will communicate that way, because I think it's important for the community to understand that from a town perspective, from where council's holding its senior management team and the organization to account, we have done what I'm going to call a very good job, I think, of coming forward with a budget that really is significantly, lower than I think where we started and where a lot of municipalities are sitting at. That 4.42, as I said, really also includes 1.5 in terms of a special infrastructure levy. As you see there, when we add the other pieces to it, library, TVTA, BIA, and the procurement for a quarter of a year, we come to 5.6%. Again, that is the town portion, and we've been, I think, very clear, and we've tried to be very deliberate with communicating that there's a town portion, but that town portion accounts for only 1/3 of the tax bill. There are the other elements of one's tax bill, the region, waste management, and education. And so when we look at the blended tax levy rate, we come to 2.841%. I know Councillor McMillan at length asked about this question, and I think wanted to be very clear that when we do communicate this, that we do a thorough job communicating what makes up each of these pieces, and I think that's what we've tried to do here. Notwithstanding that at the bottom of the tax bill, people will see that 2.841% in terms of what the impact is. There are the portions that the town is responsible for that we will make sure is included. But again, I do note that 1.5% of that is a special infrastructure levy, and that is one of the higher ones in the region, or equal to the other higher ones in the region. The region of Niagara put forward a 1.5% infrastructure levy, and we are recommending that as well. And initially we had started at 1, but I think council, seeing the importance of it, moved us to 1.5, and so we will make sure that, again, that is communicated. So what's that mean? We've used the average household price of $375,000. I know the region, other municipalities use different numbers, and there's a little bit of an art to that in terms of what number is used. We're using the number that reflects in our community the average household price, and what you see in front of you is the impact. A little over $10 per month, $250 a week, 36 cents a day, and about $130 increase per year in terms of the household impact for the entire budget and budget increase. So we are open to answering any questions council may have. Your senior management team is also here to answer any particular questions you may have, and then we can go to next steps.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was good. I have about 3 things that I want to go through, and just since I wasn't at the last capital meeting where we finished that off, just a quick question in that area as well, if you don't mind. And I'd like to talk a bit about the Vineland Fire Hall again. And I, by the way, I like the fact that you're and the suggestion that you have and pushing it back and doing that. But it's sort of at the same time, the Camden Fire Hall still is not built. It's still not anywhere close to being built. It's still not, even in an understanding stage of where we're going with it yet. So. Part of the discussion that's within this is that there's going to be a lot of time and effort going to go into deciding what this fire hall is going to look like from an internal point of view next year for Vineland. I'm just curious, is this not much more of a secondary thing? I think us finishing what we said we were going to do originally with the Camden Fire Hall is probably more important to council at this point than the Vineland one, because in my opinion, is that even Prudhom's development, where there's not going to be 67 million homes built within the next 2 years on Prudhom. So the question is that maybe something that you may want to consider from a staff point of view of pushing back even a little bit further and making sure that next year is dedicated to making sure that Camden is done properly. So through to the CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think the one brief comment I'll make, and then I'll turn it over either to Chief Hudson and or Director Brigantino from a facilities planning perspective to kind of speak a little bit on Vineland and the decision around Vineland. But we will be coming forward next week to committee to have a conversation with council, and I think to put a proposal in front of you in terms of next steps as it relates to the Camden fire station. But Councillor, I take your comments in terms of what our focus will be in 2018 in terms of making sure that that project is started, initiated, and I think done to a level that council wants it to be done to in terms of that location. And I think if we need to look at timing as it relates to Vineland, then we can definitely do that. But I will turn it over to the two directors if they've got any comments to make.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor's question, excuse me, we're looking at, it's essentially all about timing. I think there's no question we will, at some point in time, require a fire station to service that area. It's currently underserviced, but it's really a question at this point how soon that development will occur and how soon it will be occupied by, and by how many people. So at this point in time, I think we're safe to say that it's reasonable to delay it at this point. Maybe do some preliminary work in terms of getting the site, some of the site studies and some of those things done over the next year or so, and then start looking seriously the year after that in terms of where we need to go and how soon we have to do it.
If I can add, through you, Chair, we have learned some major lessons through the Camden Fire Station. Council will be receiving an update about the status of that project at the December 20th meeting. Certainly, we've taken the feedback about timelines for Vineland Fire Station back, and we have learned through Camden that there is some site works that can be conducted and planned for in 2018, so that in the 2019 year, we're able to design and build and move forward on that process much quicker than what's currently happening with the Camden Fire Station. So we're taking the lessons learned. We're thinking about proper planning so that we can get the shovel in the ground more quickly when it comes to that commitment.
Just a quick comment on Prudhom's and as it's going forward as well. Sorry, this isn't part of my three, but seeing Jill sitting there and the fact that we've discussed this at the library board as well, there needs to be a real good review overall of what facilities are going to be required by the municipality for Prudhom's. So my suggestion very strongly is and this is just personal, but I'm hoping council agrees, is let's make sure we get Camden done right, and let's take the time and effort to really figure it out what it is that we need as a municipality. We can't be doing incremental development down there from a wide variety of things. We got to understand, as that's going into place, exactly what it is that has to be built, why we're going to build it, and do the things that we're doing. So that's just a general comment. My second thing is on the procurement position. I appreciate the business case that was built for it, but the business case, of course, focused completely around the need of why to have a procurement person, okay? And I get it, and I think there is value, and I have absolutely no doubt that, we're going to reap the benefits of this as we're going forward. My concern is that this is a net new position that's coming within the municipality after many years of net new positions now. was there absolutely no opportunity with everything else going on within the municipality that there could not have been some rearranging of staff in order to accommodate a new position coming into play? I have some difficulty in thinking that we are absolutely so taxed out on every employee we have in our municipality that that there could not have been some leeway found. So I suppose through you to the CAO with that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I can tell you, I think, one of the things that I've tried to do over the last almost 2 years, and I think I'm a few days short of my 2-year anniversary, is to look at where in the organization, if any, there's, what I'm going to call fat in the system. I can tell you, and I can unequivocally say that we are running a very, very lean organization. We've taken on additional responsibilities. We are doing significantly more work than we've ever done. I think you can look at your senior management team, and I go to each of them fairly regularly and ask that same question, Councillor Foster. It really comes to, could we find an internal FD? I think we can always find internal FDs, but something has to stop. And when we look at the amount of work we're doing, the amount of projects wanting to, be moved forward, and where we're still short-staffed in a number of areas, as a comparator to even other municipalities that are smaller than ours, there isn't anywhere in the system. Believe me, if there was, I wouldn't be coming to you asking you for an FTE. I would look for somewhere in the system to find that particular FTE and to repurpose that FTE. There isn't at this particular point in time. Do I hope that, one day, in the years to come, that we've built some contingencies within the organization that we're able to do that? Absolutely. Are we there right now? I can tell you very confidently we're not.
Okay, thank you. The answer to that is fine. Looking at the 5.6% that we have going forward, the reality is you've buried a full-time position coming into play at the end of the year. So even though we're not spending for a full-time position, you've actually raised the taxes with this, when it's all said and done, about 6% because of adding that other position, if I can do my mathematics correctly with it. So there's a 0.5% masked, or 4.4% that's kind of masked with this. So I think that has to be understood by everyone as well. So I really don't have an overall problem with the numbers per se. I think staff have given strong reasons as to why things are going on. Where I do think we have a bit of a problem as a council is that we came into the 2017 year, I was chairing the last budget process, and we came in at in approximately the same amount last year. And if I remember correctly, we all stated at that time, we're going to have to raise taxes because we have to do it, because it's the right time to do it, and things should mitigate going into 2018. Well, I don't particularly see mitigation coming in with this. I see the same tax rate that's going up again. So, I mean, that's the thing we have to decide if we're okay with it. In the end, I really don't have a problem with it. There could be some concerns from the community as we're going forward, but anyway, that's my last general comment on the thing.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think quickly, in terms of where we're at last year, if I recall correctly, we were about 1% higher than where we are this year, but I take Councillor Foster's, point in terms of we were at, over 6.5% last year, and we're at about 5.5% this year. As I highlighted, I think the increase to the special infrastructure levy and a number of other things have raised this. You remove and you put us to where we were last year, then we're at 5%, which is 1.5%, almost 2% lower than where we were last year, leaving that budget. But duly noted, and I take that comment, from the councillor in terms of his role as the chair last year, and in terms of where we're at with the procurement FTE and the impact. The council's correct. I think that impact, the full impact, will be felt in 2019. So, we have to accommodate for that impact in 2019 and make sure that we're looking for savings elsewhere. But the impact this year will only be that 0.1 or $19,000.
Yeah, and by the way, my daytime job, as well as others that work in managerial roles and these types of things, is it's like pulling teeth to get FTEs as you're putting them in place. Because once you have them, you have them. So, and that's why I made the comment that I did, because this is now a full-time position that we have to account for year after year with the budgeting and stuff that we're doing. So. And I think everybody just has to understand that as we're dealing with this. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pachariva. My question goes back to the Prudhome's, the fire hall and the Prudhome's development. From what I recall, they want to start proposing to start servicing the site in 2019. Is that right? Is that correct? So if that's true, I guess my question is there a requirement before they can start to get their building permits that a certain number, that they're able to, that we are able to provide fire service for a certain number of dwellings in that area? And is that going to work for them?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, they hope to start servicing in 2018. I will let Director Dale answer the question around what's within the building code or any sort of approvals that are required.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, in regards to the building code requirements, it's also the fire code requirements for dwellings to be constructed and dwellings to be occupied. You have to have an appropriate level of water pressure for fire services.
Okay, so to clarify, so I think they're going to start servicing in 2018. They want to start building in 2019. So do we have to have a fire station in place by 2019 for them to start building?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you don't have to have it before they start servicing, but ideally, by the time occupancy starts, you should have fire protection.
So that could potentially be September of 2019. If they get a phase one done within a few months?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I think,
I'm asking if
so I think I understand the question, and I'm hearing the conversation there, and I think the conversation that we've had as a senior management team is that, and I think it was highlighted earlier, there will be homes coming on. All 3,000 aren't coming on in that first year. There's a phased approach to how those homes are coming on. We do currently have the Vineland Fire Station. Is it a long-term solution in terms of where it's located to service all of those homes? Absolutely not. That's why we're looking at a potential new build. But in that first year, do we believe that there's enough capacity and an ability to service Prudhome's in terms of where it's at? Yes. And that's why we've made the recommendation before you that we were okay with deferring both from an internal capacity perspective, from a perspective of looking at the design, looking at the needs of the site, looking at what should be there and really going through that exercise. That's why we've recommended deferring for 1 year. We don't believe that that's going to cause and I look to the chief to validate those comments, public health or public safety issue from a fire protection perspective.
So phase one, we're confident that we're good for phase one. Phase two may become an issue.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I mean, without knowing what the phases are, I wouldn't want to put a phase one, phase two to it, other than to say we're confident that the deferral of 1 year for this particular project does not put public safety at risk, looking at the timelines, even as aggressive as FBH wants to be with the Prudhome's development, that we can't accommodate that with a 1 year deferral.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And just trying to keep things in perspective, if you recall last year, we had the whole scenario around the stormwater retention pond for the Cherry Hill development where they were, building was imminent. We're a year and nothing's happened. So, I mean, what is said theoretically and what happens practically are two different things. So, I mean, theoretically, they're saying that they want to be there. I'm from Missouri. Show me. Missouri's the show me state. I think that's vision. But often visions aren't realized, right? Like, look where they wanted to be last year. So I don't think we need to be putting ourselves in a box and thinking that nothing's going to happen or we might be under service. We've got a fire station that can adequately do it until the others come on. So I wouldn't worry about that, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask Chief Hudson just to provide some comments.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I was just reminded by Director Graham that the area won't actually be serviced for water until 2019. So without the water, they won't be able to occupy the development anyway. So that whether or not we have a fire station almost becomes a moot point at that point. But in the meantime, as we mentioned, the intent is to start to do some of the preliminary studies, seeing what we have to do and getting surveys and things like that in place. But
Thank you. But I guess my question was about building permits in particular. Is there anything to delay the ability to get building permits for them? Whenever that could be quite a bit sooner than occupancy. So we're confident that should everything happen according to the timelines, they're going to be able to get building permits.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, in regards to the building permits, as was mentioned by the fire chief, so it's not only just, the fire station issue and getting, the preparation work done for that. There's also, as part of this year, there's going to be some work done through our Public Works Department to look at the water servicing. So, proper services have to be available in order to get building permits.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems like the fire service is the hot topic, if you pardon the pun. I had a couple of comments on it. First of all, that the first one was on Camden, and I wanted to get some information on that, but that's been asked and answered. The other question is, I did speak at previous meetings on the deferral of this, and I'm glad to see that that's happened. I like the idea that it's just going to go year by year. We'll look at in 2018 if Prudhoe develops faster, fine, we'll move faster. If it slows down, then we just slow down with the whole process. The other question that goes along with that is, with the deferral of the new Vineland station, does it put in jeopardy any possible partnerships that we might be able to develop, say, with ambulance service and with police service in the area?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, why don't I let the chief start answering that question?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're really at the very preliminary stages. Both agencies have shown some very preliminary interest in at least discussing it, but we haven't really gotten down to the nuts and bolts, shall we say, in terms of timing or what actually contribution is going to be intended here.
The decision now is not going to jeopardize that in any way, then?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not in my opinion, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pachariva. Just a couple of quick comments. I'm kind of echoing everyone. I'm really happy that this has been removed from the budget. I don't think there's any concern with pushing it off. I think we might even be able to push it off even further. The development isn't going to happen overnight. 1,000 houses aren't going to show up. Like, it's going to take a long time to build those houses. And we've got the fire station in Vineland it's obviously there, and it can service that area. So I don't have any concerns with that. I'm really happy it's removed. As I also would like to see the Camden Fire Hall, we really need to complete that. It has to be finished before we even consider looking at building another fire hall. Like, we absolutely have to finish that, what we said we were going to do. So I want to see that completed. And for our Ward 4 up there, a lot of people are wondering what's going on. And I'm really happy there's a report coming December 20th on that. As far as the procurement FTE, I totally support it. I think we need it. I think it'll come back to us what we will invest to get good purchasing prices and to have one person in charge of that area, an expert who knows what they're doing. It seems like we don't have anybody doing that position right now that can really focus on doing that job. So I think I totally support that. It was a very good business case that was put together. It made sense to me. I'm quite happy with the budget overall. I would have liked, to see it a little bit lower. I think everyone wants to see it as low as possible. I do think some of the residents might be a little concerned with seeing their taxes go up again. I can't see where else. It's very slim, it's very conservative, and I can't see where else what else we can take out. So those are kind of my comments. I will be satisfied if this is where it ends up. I think that's it. That's all I have to say. I don't have any questions, just comments. Thank you.
Councillor McPherson. All good. Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any major concerns with the budget, but there are a few caveats that I think are worth mentioning, because we are moving on a trend here, which I think is the appropriate one. There are some items that I think have to be in place in order to bolster some of the decisions that we're making. As far as the procurement position is, I see that somebody in the organization this year is going to have to add the complete rationalization of that position onto their workload. If they don't, then we will have made a decision that is incomplete. We want to make sure that this position, when it begins, is the position that we're hiring for, that we know exactly what this person is going to be doing, that their job doesn't change for whatever reason partway through the year. But as far as having that money come back to us, absolutely it should. And when you look at the $220,000, I think it is, that falls into contracts and that classification, I've forgotten what that amount is. I think it's about $220,000. You do begin to wonder whether or not any of that will be able to be a return on that investment. Maybe not, but certainly contract help and how we utilize contract help, it's always been a question. So I see this position being able to really get to the bottom of a lot of those things. But again, that position has to be properly vetted. And I think this is where, we'll find out, is it a full-time position? Is it a part-time position? Is it a full-time position along with some other element? These are things that we will need to know before that position is really completely justified. I like the idea that we are moving along a trend here in terms of capital budget. This amount of 11.4 million, we could essentially say that on an annual basis that we're spending 10 or 11 million dollars. I like the idea that we've got this pattern. I think it's actually been going on for some time, and therefore you can begin to see how it can be fully managed, fully balanced, with the appropriate priority setting by staff because of the way we are moving and the fact that we are very clear with those the priorities that we're looking at. They are the same year over year. I think this is a very good trend that we're seeing, and we're not varying from it. We're making sure that this is going to be how we do business in the future. I think the area that is really hitting home for me now, we absolutely must know what these numbers are, what these figures are in early January. That's around measurables. I am not prepared to go into another term or another year without knowing what those metrics are going to be that we're looking at. We've talked about it, but we don't really, it's not really obvious. So regardless of what this budget is, it wouldn't matter if it was a 5% increase, we have to start measuring the effectiveness of what we're doing. How we plan to do that is yet to be seen. I think it's a weakness in our system. The amount of money that we're spending on the culture of continuous improvement, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, for me hinges heavily on the ability of us to replace staff, to support staff, to ensure that we're making an investment in that cycle of the most expensive and the most valuable commodity in the organization. There should be no surprises. We know that we're going to have a big turnover in public works. It's no surprise. Everybody knows what's happening. So what is the plan for it? And then is there going to be some leveling out? Because there are specialized jobs like procurement that we need, but I agree with Councillor Foster in the sense that once you have those positions, they either have to be working for you 100% or you're going to be looking at some other solutions. So for council, you have to know that those mechanisms are there to look at another solution. Otherwise, you're just adding on and adding on. And it's rather a trite thing to say, really, because for years there was no adding on, and there is so much work to do. There's no question about that. So I go back to the measurables because that's something that I think we absolutely have to start to see the more evidence there. Overall, I like the trending of this. I like the way the budgets have been done over the last few years. There's a lot of clarity that we're seeing. I'm not concerned about the Vineland Fire Station. As far as I'm concerned, it could very well be 2020. Get a good plan in place. Make sure it's well thought out. It'll get implemented when it gets implemented. But yeah, let's get Camden on the go. And I'll just repeat what I said at the last meeting. As far as I'm concerned, when you're looking at services that have a highly regulated element to them, the regulations need to be implemented by the experts. I don't believe that those things should come and sit on the shoulders of council. They have to be worked out by the experts within the system. So whatever that is, we will decide the amounts of money that are available, and the services will have to be, the level of implementation will be determined by the experts. And I'm pretty comfortable with that, and I think it's one that we need to start taking a hard line on. Otherwise, it's just a whole bunch of emotional decision-making, and I don't really want to go down that road. So it's a good budget. I can live with it. It's a little, we've had a couple of years, but people may start raising their eyebrows. I don't know why they would, but they will, because it's going to be another increase, but it's just the way it is. We've got to support that growth that's coming down the road, and there's no point in pulling back this year and finding out we've got a 2.7% increase, and we don't have things in place that are important to support that. So thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for the work they've done. It's very good.
Yeah, and taking upon that, Your Worship, I mean, we've got a well-balanced and affordable budget, I feel. Council has exercised its long-term vision through investment in the community. And it's important to keep that vision and to keep that steady rate of growth. And Councillor McPherson, in one of our very first sessions, said, and I think we can frame it as this is a budget of staying the course. We've said what we wanted to do. I think by making cuts or nickel and diming, you're no further ahead. You know what? We've done the heavy lifting, and I think the procurement position is a worthwhile position, and I don't mean to put Mr. Kirkopoulos on the spot or anything, but if you look at legal consulting and contractual services at approximately $300,000, a savings of 10% there, and then also you've got to look on the capital side. The way we procure, the way we buy vehicles, the way we buy services. This person will be entrusted with doing this. It won't be running off the side of someone else's desk. So this person, if you can get 10% in contractual services, if you can get 10% in your capital services, you've paid for the position. And then you can go forward and you can look for other efficiencies that they can do. So I think it's worthwhile. I think we're going to, but then, with what the mayor said, we need those metrics. So at the end of the first full year, what were the cost savings? What did we derive from that position? And let's start, we talk metrics, but we actually have to start, putting those numbers on it so we can say to the public that this is what we've done. You go back and you look, 4.4% is the town's portion. And, when you add in your external agencies, we're at 5.6. But 1.5 of that is the infrastructure levy that we heard loud and clear that the public is behind us to do. We're taking that money and we're spending it wisely. We're trying to get ahead of the infrastructure gap. I mean, if you remove that, it's 2.9. So really, and then also, we made the investment in the transit pilot. I mean, we're moving down a path of delivering more services to the residents, but really almost at the same price. So I think we've done an excellent job. You should all be commended for your hard work and your diligence throughout all of this, and staff has heard loud and clear, from the discussions, the way we want to go, and I think tonight's presentation reflects that. So I'm very pleased with the work of not only committee but also staff, and I think we're at a point where, we can go out and we can proudly say that we're happy with this and this is where we need to be. Your Worship.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make a comment about water, wastewater, and an issue of transparency. We know what, some of you know better than others of us, the work that went into getting water, wastewater to where it is today. And the way that we budget for that is different than other municipalities. But you will hear people complaining about the water and wastewater rates here. And I'm wondering if it isn't time for us to explain exactly how we do that, how we've chosen to do that, to show people that that there's a variety of ways to report water, wastewater charges. Some municipalities choose not to report them at all, really. They embed them in their basic levy. I'm wondering what other councillors think about that. We've landed in a pretty good place now with the fixed and variables and the summer and the seasonal highs and lows. Just wondering if there isn't something else that we could do to present that. It is a very good story, really.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that, and I think Angela knows this as well from the last number of years. We have as a council quite regularly, at the tail end of budgets, put forward documentation, even through the tax bills and stuff like that, to show people what it is that's really happening with these things, and also explaining what the water and wastewater has been doing. I think that actually, as a municipality, we've done a good job of showing what we're doing. Yeah, we get complaints. I get complaints from my wife all the time on water and wastewater, but the reality is that we have done what it is that we're supposed to do with this, and that is we've done what the government has recommended. We're transparent as heck with all of this stuff, and so my suggestion, like with the tax, like we're going to be sending out tax stuff again, I'm sure. So yeah, just explain once again to everyone, how that all comes about. I did have one question, though, separate than that. On your presentation that you gave, or through to the CAO, so the 375,000 that is the number that you use to do the comparative. I'm assuming that that's either the average or the median, or what price is that? Is that supposed to be the average?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that number was provided through MPAC, and that is our average assessment.
It's
for
the
town.
average, okay, thank you. The only reason I ask is that it sounds low, and I am, like when my house is worth 600,000, it's like I'm thinking, that it sounds like it's low, so, but, anyway, just, whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just back on this issue of the water and wastewater, I agree. I think that we have done a good job on putting it all together the way it is now, and we've sold that to the constituents. But I think where we fall down, in one point anyhow, was when something new gets put into it. It's not emphasized enough. And the example would be when we reduce the water rates in the summertime. That's something that was brand new, and it was something that was very important for the residents to know. But in my neighborhood, nobody knew about it. And when we're out watering the flowers and we're talking to each other, then I pass that information on. Whether it's likely there, and I'm sure it's there in the information we send out, but they just don't read it, and maybe there's another way we need to do it. But as far as the basics, I think everyone understands that. But it's when something new and the change is made, not necessarily in the rates, but in the delivery of it, that's where we fall down, I think, and just getting the new news out there.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the feedback. What we're looking at this year is actually, through communications, is working on providing residents new information, presenting it differently through the tax insert as well as through the water rates. Last year, the water rates were established late in the year, so our information was presented really quickly. So I think we're going to just be looking at the whole branding of it and the refurbishment of the whole information process.
Something that was really important that we did, and not many people knew about it. And even it doesn't really reflect in the bill as well either. So, and I just got my water bill today.
Yes.
I've got a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Foster. Whereas the Council of the Town of Lincoln has evaluated the operational requirements for the Town of Lincoln to ensure the efficient delivery of municipal services to the ratepayers for the Town of Lincoln, now therefore be it resolved that the 2018 capital budget expenditures of $11,391,430 be approved. And further, that the 2018 operating budget be approved with a tax levy requirement of $15,182,535 for local municipal purposes. And further, that the Council of the Town of Lincoln direct staff to prepare the annual taxation levying bylaw as required by the Municipal Act 2001 upon the setting of the tax ratios and requisition amounts by the Regional Municipality of Niagara and other applicable bodies. Councillor Foster?
I'd like a recorded vote.
I knew you were going to ask, and thank you for that. I was going to motion to you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. On the question, if each councillor would indicate yea or nay, I'll proceed in alphabetical order, concluding with the chair. Councillor Brunet? Yes. Councillor Foster?
Yes.
Councillor McMillan?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Njima? Councillor Thompson is absent this evening. Councillor Timmers?
Yes.
Mayor Easton? Yes. Chair Patriva?
Yes.
If you'd like to declare it.
And that is carried. So, got a motion moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Njima, that the proposed 2018 water and wastewater rates and charges presented by staff be approved, and an appropriate bylaw to set rates and charges for the supply of water and rates and charges for wastewater service in the town of Lincoln be presented to council for ratification. All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any councillor inquiries? Councillor Foster.
Yes, thank you, and I'm bringing this inquiry forward on behalf of Councillor Renjima and myself. And I'm not sure that this is more a regional issue, so I suppose this might be directed at more at the mayor than anything else. But while you guys were in China, we had some very interesting garbage days here in the town of Lincoln, to say the least. We were blown to bits, if you want to put it that way. And it's pretty clear, you know, people are trying to do what's right within the community to meet the needs of setting out garbage, the needs of doing the separation, of doing all this type of stuff. But there's something wrong with the system right at the moment. When we get a gust of wind like that, we have stuff all over the place, and there's and it's just not acceptable. And I don't know what the solution is. I mean, we looked at a couple of things at the AMO conference last year. That one guy had that really cool heavy plastic thingy that you know they're recommending can be done, et cetera, et cetera. But so from us, perhaps through to Sandra, if you know, we can find out from the region if you know there's any thought processes going in place that you know to help with some of these things or to make recommendations for the community, etc. You know, but there's problems with it right now, and we need to somehow resolve it. So,
and even though we were away, we were getting pictures of the stuff blown all over the place.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed that Mr. Sinnott had an article in today's paper, I think it was, and he actually, I think his recommendation, the suggestion that he was making to people is the right one. There are certain times of the year when you really should be putting those things in one of the bags, one of the blue bags, and then putting them in the box. Unless you're prepared to weight them down or put one box on top of the other. But I mean, the pictures were pretty horrendous, and I've talked to different people, and it just seems that some of those cul-de-sacs were just really a mess. And then it gets down into the stormwater management pond area. It just creates a huge mess. But I believe it requires people to put their items in another plastic bag. That's certainly what I've done for years. I certainly wasn't prepared to pick it up, and I didn't expect anybody else to do it. So that's the only suggestion that I can make. It's not a problem anywhere else that I'm aware of, but I have not heard of any other problems.
Yeah, just by the way, it was in all parts of the community, and so even from our point of view, I mean, like. Maybe we need to do a public education program back in and through, you know, through the services of our town, basically saying if that's a good solution, then that's fine. I really do think, though, this is something that the region needs to take a look at a little bit better. I mean, you know, and I'm sure it's something that you guys are looking at regularly when in the discussions that are going on. So, and maybe there's some recommendations from them. Maybe they can be sponsoring some outreach within the community. So anyway, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify with Councillor Foster, are you talking, through you, Mr. Chairman, are you talking about containers that have tops on them? Is that what you're referring to?
No, and the reason I say no is that like the system that we have in place right now is designed around doing manual pickup of garbage. And Councillor Jim and I had a good discussion about this the other night as well. There's many communities do have lids on them, but then they also have automated machines that are going through the community and taking the stuff away. So it's not practical and it'd be very expensive to go down that particular road. So
Yeah.
again, you know, maybe we need to have some sort of an education program of some variety. I don't know. But it's not working, and it's unsanitary, and it's very unhealthy for people with what it is that we're accidentally doing. And it only happens a couple of times a year, but it's just enough that, you know, our phones get ringing off the hook, and, you know, all the Rod Sinwats of the world are firing in pictures to us. So anyway, thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's tough to decide what to do. We get complaints, and it's more than a couple of times a year, and it's almost all year. And I think we're hearing more about it because of Lincoln Square being more highly populated, and we're getting a lot of concerns from in there. But it's all through the year. They're blowing down John Street into the field at the end on the other side of Bartlett. We hear that, and I know that complaints come all the time. And yeah, education is part of it, but I think people put their bins out there and then they come home and they're empty, and then that's good. Let's put them back in the garage. And I don't know what the answer is. And I keep saying that I don't know what the answer is, but it's happened. It does happen all year, and it happens all over the place.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So to follow up on Councillor Foster's comment, there was quite a bit of discussion amongst the municipal communicators who were providing ongoing feedback to the region during that situation. It was very untidy and unpleasant, and there was significant confusion, like there is daily, about who provides that service. So we have been working with the corporate communications team at the region on some solutions around better proactive communication, but also in terms of solutions around community cleanup and what can be done around soliciting some of our community agencies across the region in terms of when we have days like this, is there an opportunity for some of the service clubs to provide service if the region isn't able to do those cleanups? So we have been trying to engage them on some social responsible solutions.
And I think too, you know, to Councillor Foster's question and this, I think it's more of an education. Right? I mean, I put all of my newspapers in a plastic bag, and the bag goes into the bin, and nothing blows around. So, and just a reminder too that councillor inquiries are questions/answers. We're not going to go into a large debate or an extensive discussion about this. It's a question that was brought up. Staff will go back and find the appropriate answers, and then bring them back to us at a later date. So, the other two councillors, if you have something different or something that we don't want to add to a discussion because we're not having a discussion. I've been reminded. Okay. Chairman?
Thank you, Vice Worship.
Okay.
My only question is, where is the pink tie?
Pardon me?
Where is the pink tie? Where is the budget tie?
Well, the budget time will come when we actually pass it when council. And new shoes and my gold pen.
I thought it was tonight.
No, it's not tonight.
I was waiting for
I'd
it.
just be dressing up for staff and you guys.
Well, don't we deserve that?
Yes, you do.
Thank
I
you.
was, honest to God, I was too tired.
Thank you, Vice Worship.
Are there any notices of motion this evening? Any announcements? Your Worship.
I'm going to include this in here because this is Committee of the Whole. On Monday, next Monday night at the council meeting, there's going to be an opportunity for an in-camera session with council and the CAO, and we're going to be discussing the work plan for 2017 and going forward for 2018. So I just want to make sure that everybody's ready for that discussion, and I think there's going to be some opportunity for us to make adjustments into next year, which I think will leave us with a really robust agenda going forward, which really is maybe not often the case in an election year, but for us, that's going to be the case. So it'll give us a chance to do some adjusting, but also to comment on how well we think things have gone. So everyone needs to be prepared for that. Thank you.
Okay. There are no closed session items for this evening's agenda, so there being no further business, I declare the meeting adjourned. Good show.
1 hour and 50.
Thank you, William. Thank you for that, brother. Appreciate it. Oh, I know.